And welcome back to another Java tutorial. My name is Kelvin from Firehawk Productions. In the last tutorial, we learned about object attributes. And so we gave things like restaurant name, restaurant rating, and whether or not my restaurant has a buffet. And in this tutorial, I'll teach you guys a little bit more about constructors. So a constructor is what we created here. It basically allows the construction of an object. And so in this case, we created a restaurant object through this constructor. So first, if you guys followed my code from the previous tutorials, then you can use this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete these two lines because it has nothing to do with what we're learning. I was just showing you what objects were. So I'm just gonna delete this. And then I'm also going to delete all the printouts, or no, I'm going to comment out all the printouts here. So comment all that out. All right. So what I'm going to be teaching you in this tutorial is creating more than one constructor for a class. So in this class, we named it class restaurant. And whenever you have a constructor, it always has to have the same name as the class. So in this case, we named a restaurant, so therefore the constructor name also has to be restaurant. And your object also has to have the same name as the class, which is restaurant. So we created a constructor here, and it takes three parameters: a name, a rating, and whether or not the restaurant has a buffet. But what if I wanted to just create a constructor with nothing in it? And I'm going to type out the code and explain to you all what it means. So I'm going to create two more constructors. So watch what I do. Public restaurant. That's my first empty constructor. There's nothing in it. And I'm going to create another constructor right now. So follow what I do. All right, so right now you can see here that I have three different constructors. The first one is, public restaurant, and there's no parameters, and there's nothing inside either. So what this means is if I were to create a restaurant like this, let's say if I were to create another restaurant, and I'm going to just call it random restaurant. All right, equals new restaurant. Okay, so right now I created a new instance of a restaurant with a variable named random restaurant, but it has no parameters. And what I mean by that is if you look at the Kelvin's restaurant variable here, it has three parameters: a string, an integer, and a boolean. And Java, what Java does is it looks for these parameters and it finds this constructor that has three parameters. And the only one of these constructors that have three parameters is this one. Because you see here it has a string, an integer, and a boolean. But for this instance of the object, random restaurant, Java will then look for a constructor that is empty with no parameters in it. And then it actually finds one and it's here. And so you can actually create another object that uses this constructor, and all this constructor takes is the name. So you just need a string for the name. So if I were to create another restaurant, and I'm just going to name this blah blah equals new restaurant, and then I just specify a string like blah blah restaurant. Okay, that works because Java will then look at your constructors and see, does any of the constructors have just a string parameter? Does this one have it? No. Does this one? Yes. So therefore it uses this one. But if I were to create, let's say I were to create a restaurant, Okay, equals new restaurant, and I put 2 parameters like random name restaurant, and then I put like 5. Okay, Java's not going to recognize that because Java's going to try to look for a constructor with 2 parameters, a string and an integer. This one does not have it. This one only has the string, and this one requires you to have 3 parameters, a string, an integer, and a boolean. So therefore, if you wanted to create a restaurant with 2 parameters, you'd have to write another constructor for it. And you can do this by doing public restaurant string name int rating. Okay, now here is the one we just created, and now you see the error is gone because Java will look for a restaurant constructor that has a string parameter and an integer parameter. And if you look back up, bam, here it is. String parameter, integer parameter, done. So what I wanted to teach you in this tutorial is basically you can create as many different kinds of constructors as you want, but you have to make sure that the constructor, like the name, has to be the same as when you named your class. And so right here, right now, I have 4 different constructors, and they all work, you know, the same. They all have the same attributes. All of the restaurants you created here, all 4 of these have these 3 attributes, except that you just don't define it when you create the object. All right. So that's going to be all for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'll be teaching you, or I'll be continuing on the object topic. So yeah, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you all next video.